based on your research and of course on your opinion, tell us, why do African Americans need reparations? And if we don't do that, what is the likelihood that we solve the inequality that we all live with?
Well, our inability to pay the unpaid debt is still with us. That the racial wealth divide, where we see white families median wealth 8 times that of Black families, is a direct result of the systemic exclusion of assets or of subsidies that we are owed. And this continues to this day. In addition, the sort of framework, of you will, of denying African Americans public subsidies that other populations enjoy was taken up in different ways in more contemporary contexts. So you have housing discrimination, you have criminal justice bias, you have business discrimination. All of these follow a certain path of that Black people were denied what they are due. And so there's a real cost that Black people still have to pay, a real penalty. You know, my research shows that homes in Black neighborhoods compared to areas where there are few Black people in them are underpriced by 23%, about $48,000 per home. Cumulatively, that's about $156 billion in lost equity in Black neighborhoods. And this is particularly true in Detroit, where so many Black people used to own homes, but could not hold on to them because of the housing crisis. And let me just bring this back to wealth. When you have less wealth, it's harder to withstand the economic shocks that inevitably occur. Those who had wealth could survive the housing crisis better. Those who had wealth could survive the pandemic, can withstand environmental hurdles. And so that lack of wealth really predicts for lower outcomes in every other area. So, you know, this is an issue that has not gone away. People say, oh, I didn't own any slaves. Well, the impact of slavery, the impact of Jim Crow racism, the impact of housing discrimination is still with us. And by the way, we're not asking individuals to pay reparations. We're asking the federal government, state governments, local municipalities to pay, and also institutions, because we can't let them off the hook. So colleges and universities, churches. So I'm encouraged by what's happening all across the country with these local efforts, but hopefully they will move up to the national level.
Yeah. So I want to talk about the practical end of this with you as well, the form of reparations. So you just threw out a number, $156 billion, that gap between what white families in America have been able to earn through property ownership and what African Americans have been able to do. That's it's a huge number, but we throw huge numbers all the time out with federal spending. But what is the way? What is the way to make up that gap? Is it through some sort of payment, or is there a more creative spectrum of things that we ought to be thinking about to make that number go away?
Well, remember, reparations is mostly about the claims people can have around systemic oppression. So there are different types of claims made. So when you're talking about slavery and unpaid labor, you're talking about a check. When you're talking about housing discrimination, you're talking about down payment assistance and the like. And you know, so it really depends on the claim. You know, my colleague Rashawn Ray and I put out a report not that long ago where we outline a series of steps, including cash payments, but also including scholarships to make college free. We also include business grants because we know that businesses were denied opportunities. We also include other subsidies. So I think a range of approaches coming from multiple levels. Again, when you're talking about housing discrimination, for instance, there was housing discrimination on the part of federal, state, and local ordinances. So entities. So all of those institutions, all of those levels of government have some responsibility to pay. So it's going to look different. And that 156 billion, it was only in the case of housing devaluation. And I just want to put this in perspective. In just that one area, 156 billion would have financed more than 4 million Black-owned businesses based upon the average amount Black people use to start their firms. It would have paid for 8 million four-year degrees based upon the average amount of a four-year public education. It would have replaced the pipes in Flint, Michigan 3,000 times over, covered nearly all of Hurricane Katrina damage, and it's double the annual economic burden of the opioid crisis. This is a big number. So when you're talking about reparations, which falls in anywhere in the area of $3 to $17 trillion based upon the model you use, you could see a dramatic shift in how Black people live. And again, I just want to emphasize this. And I say this like it keeps my teeth white, that there's nothing wrong with Black people that ending racism can't solve. That when people talk about what's wrong with Black communities, they blame Black people. Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese philosopher who recently died, once said that if you are growing a head of lettuce and it's not growing, you don't blame the lettuce. You look to see if it's getting sunlight. You look to see if the soil's enriched, if it's getting rainwater. You don't blame the lettuce. But when it comes to Black communities, we're constantly blaming the lettuce and not looking at the policies that still inflict harm and penalty on us. So for me, reparations is about healing, is a moral debt, as was mentioned, it's a fiscal one. And just one more point, that this idea that we can't handle a check is ridiculous. Just this past pandemic, you actually saw two things happen. When millennials had their student loans frozen, guess what happened? We saw a small bump in home ownership. And the relief packages for had actually caused an uptick in Black businesses, particularly micro businesses. And so Black people used their stimulus checks to start new businesses. Why wouldn't they start more businesses with more money? I mean, the evidence is pretty clear that when given an opportunity, we take it.